On August 3rd, in El Paso, Texas, a mass shooting occurred in a local Walmart, killing 20 people and injuring 26 more. On the 4th, another shooting in Dayton, Ohio took place on a downtown street, killing 9 more people and 27 more were injured. The following Monday, August 5th, would mark the day that President Donald Trump would give his remarks on the incident. This is what he had to say.
Good morning. My fellow Americans, this morning, our nation is overcome with shock, horror, and sorrow. This weekend, more than 80 people were killed or wounded in 2 evil attacks. One Saturday morning in El Paso, Texas, a wicked man went to a Walmart store where families were shopping with their loved ones. He shot and murdered 20 people and injured 26 others, including precious little children. Then, in the early hours of Sunday morning, Dayton, Ohio, another twisted monster opened fire on a crowded downtown street. He murdered 9 people, including his own sister, and injured 27 others. The First Lady and I join all Americans in praying and grieving for the victims, their families, and the survivors. We will stand by their side forever. We will never forget. These barbaric slaughters are an assault upon our communities, an attack upon our nation, and a crime against all of humanity. We are outraged and sickened by this monstrous evil, the cruelty, the hatred, the malice, the bloodshed, and the terror. Our hearts are shattered for every family whose parents, children, husbands, and wives were ripped from their arms and their lives. America weeps for the fallen. We are a loving nation, and our children are entitled to grow up in a just, peaceful, and loving society. Together, we lock arms to shoulder the grief. We ask God in heaven to ease the anguish of those who suffer, and we vow to act with urgent resolve.
This solid opening led to President Trump laying out his plan to, as he said, stop this evil contagion. The first step was working to identify early warning signs of mass shootings. He stated that the Department of Justice was working with local, state, and federal agencies, as well as social media companies, to develop tools that can detect mass shooters before they strike. He cited the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida, stating that there were warning signs, but no one acted. The problem with this in the social media sphere, according to The Verge, is that Trump seemed to be suggesting that companies could use predictive software to single out potential shooters based on their activity on a platform. This would mean taking action before someone even commits a crime, causing privacy and accountability issues. Next, he stated, "We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or substantially reduce this, and it has to begin immediately." The connection between video games and gun violence, however, has been proven time and time again not to exist. USA Today states that there is no solid evidence linking video games and gun violence. In fact, in 2011, an economics research led to the conclusion that as sales of violent video games increased, the crime rate for violent crime actually decreased. Then he turned to mental illness, stating that mental illness and hate pulled the trigger, not the gun. While I agree that guns are not at fault here, it seems there is little correlation between mental health issues and violence. USA Today reports that the American Psychological Association reported that mass shootings perpetrated by people with serious mental illnesses account for less than 1% of all yearly gun-related homicides. Kevin Fisher, the executive director of the Michigan chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, stated that for the president to make a statement like mental illness and hatred pull the trigger, not the gun, it is dangerous because it further stigmatizes people with real mental illness and unfortunately continues to perpetrate the idea that people with mental illnesses are dangerous. Finally, Trump spoke of making sure that those who pose a risk to public safety do not have access to firearms, and if they do, those firearms can be taken through rapid due process. This is a plan that actually makes sense. The Los Angeles Times says that even the National Rifle Association, who usually opposes any restrictions on guns, agrees that the state protection orders to this effect are perfectly acceptable as long as they don't infringe on gun owners' rights. The only concern with this idea that the LA Times mentions is that due to lack of research, it is not known definitively if this will work. The only way to gain evidence on what works to curb gun violence is through trial and error. Most of President Trump's suggestions are full of error, but even a broken clock is right twice a day, and maybe his protection order plan just might work. My name is Sierra Steele, and this has been your political news update. Thank you and good night.